What is going on? Episode 149 of season 2 is here of the past. I am your host, BT. Hope everyone is doing well, having positive energy and positive vibes on this beautiful, calm, and tranquil Tuesday afternoon. It may be morning or afternoon or evening where you are, but I wanted to just get the salutations and condolences and positive words to everyone to get started. Quite a bit of news to talk about, and I know I say that each week, but this week is definitely no exception. Before we get started, as I always like to do, I always like to give our attention to, I don't want to say the sponsors, but companies or key parts to why the podcast is going the way it has. First and foremost, the episodes are uploaded each week using the Spreaker app. If you are looking to get in the recording of podcasting, I would definitely recommend Spreaker. I've been using it for a couple years. Didn't know how I would feel about it at first, but now since I've gotten into a flow and a groove with using it, I wouldn't change it for the world. So if you're looking to do podcasting, definitely check out Spreaker.com. If you want to listen to any previous episodes, you can go to Spreaker.com/Brite Podcast. Also, the microphone that you're hearing me on initially, thanks to modern technology and just kind of making sure that I'm getting everything in the right path, I was initially going to be recording using the default microphone on the laptop, but then I realized that I needed to change a couple things. So the episodes are recorded using the Blue Yeti microphone. If you are looking to start out in podcasting and you want a worthwhile investment, I would personally recommend this microphone. I've used it now for nearly a year, and I don't have any regrets or any changes against it. So, not gonna really hold y'all long. I'm trying not to. It's a lot of content, a lot of information to share. I will admit that I may run into a couple of hiccups along the way. So if it's a little, I don't want to say choppy, but if it's a little delay, a twinge on a couple of things, and just kind of hold it to my head, not my heart. But we'll just go ahead and get right into it. As I've stated each week, I will be giving you facts, or not facts, but giving you information about domestic violence, because I know it is a very touched yet untouched topic. So I wanted to make sure that I give the proper attention to it. And as I've shared, if you are following the podcast, if you need any help or need any assistance, the first page, the first tab that I always share does lead you to, if you're in need of help, if you're in a crisis, don't try to handle it on your own. There's a domestic violence hotline number that you can call. That is 1-800-799-SAFE or 1-800-799-7233, or you can go to www.thehotline.org. Always want to make sure I get that out there. As mentioned before, episode, I believe it was 146, I did share or provide a couple of links for ways to get assistance or help if you're in a tough time or have an Android or an iPhone and you need any assistance with getting through that type of a situation. Also, local businesses, and I'm kind of doing this as a balance plug. One of my friends, I always make sure I get her business out there because, hey, I've known her from when I first attempted to do quote unquote talk radio, and we've kind of just kept a good bond. So she's practically like a sister to me. Vernetta, if you're listening, or if you have listened to any shows, believe me, I always make sure I give you a shout out. But check out A Taste of Heaven RVA. I do have a couple of links in the show notes as well. I do, and also if you're wanting to get any food from her or her business, they're located at Virginia Center Commons Mall in the food court. That's the simplest way to describe it. If you're not sure of the exact address or you needed to drive to it, that is 10101. Obviously, you'll be driving, depending. 10101 Brook Road. That's in Glen Allen, Virginia, 23059. Their number is 804-266-2509. And if you wanted to contact them by email to get any inquiries about their menu or anything of that sort, A Taste of Heaven RVA at gmail.com. You definitely want to be sure when looking forward to look for a Taste of Heaven RVA. So this will be a little different for a podcast this morning today, because normally we just jump right into sports and call it a day. But today I get to bask a bit in glory, which is not often involved when it comes to fantasy league. If anyone has heard or known about my stories or lack of triumphs with fantasy sports, predominantly in football, I'm not the best. And I'm okay with admitting that. But for whatever reason, my past podcast, and ironically, I called it past podcast, and I guess it just worked. But my team I'm in an ESPN fantasy basketball league, and the name of the group that we're doing this course is linked with our Facebook sports group, A Space to Sport. A friend of mine and I and a couple of other guys, we've been kind of keeping this group maintained and well intrigued for about 4 years, if not longer. When the group initially started, so I'll give you the backstory about the group, and then I'll get into the fantasy league part. When we were looking at the group, we found a lot of people online do stories and talk about different sports stories that are going on in the world of sports, but no one really had a place that you could say, hey, I can go to this site or I can go to this group, and it's just an all-out sports discussion. Sometimes it turns into discussions. Most times it's just up to the minute news of what's going on in the sports world, and it's mainly a group of guys and girls. Like we got a couple of girls in the group that are fans of their respective teams. When we first did the group, it was more aggressive in the sense of we don't want to have anyone, don't post any memes or don't go out of hand with what you post. But now we've become a little bit more flexible and lenient and let the group be a little bit more fun, but still keep it productive. And, as moderator, I know from my perspective, being a moderator, I've made it my goal to make sure that no one kind of goes outside the lines or over their boundaries with what they say to someone. So with doing that, it's helped out with making for a more consistent and a more fluent show. A more fluent group. So normally they do fantasy football. I've done fantasy football leagues with them before. Hasn't been the greatest. I'll leave it at that. But this year I'm taking on a bit of a new run or a new challenge with doing fantasy basketball. So I won't really. You may or may not see my group. If not, that's fine. I understand. But I'll get my lineup that I have. And believe it or not, I haven't changed anybody on my. Like most teams, people will get players and they'll trade and swap and do all of that. I'm that person that keeps my core lineup, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But my lineup is pretty stable. Sorry, it's not feeling. I'm feeling good, but this ain't been this has been, as many of you all may or may not be aware, this is like flu cold season, so a lot of people haven't been feeling good. So it's not on purpose, but we'll continue. But the lineup I have is Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, LaMarcus Aldridge, Andre Drummond, Dennis Smith, Mason Plumlee, Kemba Walker, Iguodala, Kyle Kuzma, Harrison Barnes, Steven Adams, and Jamal Murray. I may make some changes today because I don't want to have too many guys that's on the bench that could be actually starting to benefit me for the day. But, of course, I digress. I've mainly been doing pretty good on getting points and getting players in their proper rotations as needed. Like I said, I'm first in the league. My record currently is 14-3. As far as the actual standings go, I'm in the East, and kind of the only team that's really giving me a threat is the Dream Team, which is one of the other moderators of the group. In the West, it's kind of a top-heavy group in a sense. It's Team Kilbrew and Take No Prisoners. They're both 11-6. But for the most part, as far as statistically, this league is kind of mine to, I should kind of coast through it. I've had a couple of players go through injuries. Chris Paul, that early, injury bug that he caught, I was not sure how that would go. But luckily it didn't, affect the lineup or the morale of the team or how stats came in, because I still had Kemba Walker. Between Kemba Walker, Dennis Smith, and Jamal Murray, that's helped me out with that lineup. So I like I said, normally, usually whenever I'm talking about fantasy league, it's well, we had another rough week in fantasy and the team still sucks. So this year, I just decided to do it a little different because I really haven't. I mean, the season's been going on for a while. As you can tell, it's like we're about 17 games in, and it's done weekly. So I have been pretty much on a winning streak right now with my team. At first, it was like I said, it was a point where I lost a few games, not really starting or not really adjusting my lineup. A suggestion I would recommend, and this is with fantasy basketball or with fantasy football, pick one day or pick, well, fantasy basketball is a little different because basketball, you can kind of, games are going on constantly. With football, it's Sunday. So your best assessment is by Saturday night, Sunday morning, doing your research and knowing who's healthy, who's good to start. If you need to start dropping players, based on statistics, things of that sort. But with the NBA, it's a lot different, so it's worked for me just fine. Like I said, I haven't really done many trades. I just kind of keep my team simple and kind of go from there, and that's just work. That's just work. If it's almost like the age old theory of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and that's kind of what I've done. So that's my take on how I've handled fantasy basketball, and hopefully it'll kind of take me to possibly winning my first championship for a fantasy league. So we'll see how that all goes. Before I jump into this next topic, because I want to address this because I thought it was funny. For some reason, because I was doing, as I tell many of you, or as I share, as I always talk about on the podcast, I always do my show notes and go over the information like, well, here's what we're going to talk about. Here's what we're going to get into, so line up things, X, Y, and Z stuff going on. For whatever reason, I thought I could have sworn the All-Star game was this weekend. I don't know why. It turns out it wasn't. So I was like, all right, I need to reevaluate. I need to think about what stories are going on, what is happening in the news. And to my surprise, everything that could have happened all happened between football. I mean, well, not football, but basketball and the Olympics. So I'm going to give some thoughts and some information that's happened, and then we'll just let it kind of flow. So first story I have is I guess the Lakers haven't learned their lesson with quote unquote tampering. The Lakers were fined $50,000 instead of the $500,000 they got fined with the Paul George incident. This time it was $50,000 for comments that Magic Johnson made regarding Giannis Antetokounmpo. I will warn you, I'm gonna mess his name up at least 12 times in this post, but we'll just let it be what it is. The LA Lakers on Tuesday were fined $50,000 by the NBA for yet another violation of the league's anti-tampering rule after Magic Johnson recently praised Bucks star Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's the second time the NBA has fined the Lakers over tampering issues. The team had to pay $500,000 in August after the NBA said an investigation produced evidence that of contact between general manager Rob Pelinka and Paul George's agent after a previous warning about tampering. Johnson recently praised Antetokounmpo's play in an ESPN interview, saying he'd someday lead the Bucks to a championship. A source told ESPN that the fine Tuesday was for the comments made in the interview. Johnson stated, "Oh yeah," when he was asked whether he saw parallels between Antetokounmpo and his gameplay. With his ball handling skills and his passing ability, he plays above the rim. I never could do that, but in his understanding of the game, his basketball IQ, his creativity of shots for his teammates, that's where we have the same thing. Can bring it down, make a pass, make a play. I'm happy he's starting in the All-Star game because he deserves that, and he's going to be like an MVP, a champion. This dude, he's going to put Milwaukee on the map, and I think he's going to bring them a championship one day. The Bucks even sent out an Instagram post that highlighted what Johnson stated about Giannis, who's in the midst of his best season. He's averaging career highs of 28 points, 10 boards, along with 4 assists a game. They then show an image of what the Bucks posted, quoting what Magic said regarding Giannis as far as his future. The article then continues on. They broke down the fine from August, and they were then addressing how Magic, quote unquote, went to school for having to learn about, what type of, different schools there were, like collective bargaining agreement school, salary cap school, and tampering school. They went into the reference, which I'm gonna get into this because the article kind of is a simple, it kind of just goes in and breaks down what happened with the Paul George incident. The fine was lower, which I understand. It was $50,000. What I'm still trying to understand, and I guess the NBA can give their speculation towards it. What specifically was stated that was considered to be tampering? Is it because Magic gave kudos to Giannis? Is it that as a player, I guess it's the interaction with the team or with the process, because it also comes down to if Giannis is looking at free agency and that discussion possibly lingers or generates attention, then it draws about a concern. I'm trying to, like I said, the fine was heavy with the Paul George incident, but this fine wasn't as heavy, and I'm just wondering what levies into what the magnitude of the fine was for, and if it was justified. And also, as an added bonus, was there really tampering involved? I don't feel like there was, but of course, it's the NBA, and it can be looked at as potential tampering as to what you may or may not say. Thankfully, I think the reason why this fine may not have been as high too is even though Giannis is a superstar in the NBA, he's not as big of a superstar as Paul George, and the timing was much different of the season because it wasn't like Giannis can go to the Lakers anytime soon. So we'll kind of segue, and I'm not giving that story, and it's not that I don't want to give that story more attention, but it's really a much bigger story that broke, or bigger stories rather that broke. As I mentioned last week, Blake Griffin was one of the big trade blockbusters that happened leading into the trade deadline. I believe I mentioned Nikola Mirotic. He was traded from the Bulls to the Pelicans. It was kind of almost a way of them saying either it would be Bobby Portis or it would be Mirotic, and obviously Mirotic was not the favorite, but it's how the game goes. But there were a lot, and I'm going to go ahead and forewarn you, this will take up a good amount of the podcast today. There were a lot of trades that happened in the buzz scene or the wacky world of the NBA on trade deadline. The trade deadline was last Thursday on February the 8th. A couple stories broke where guys were going to different teams, and it's okay, no big deal. The big shocker for me, and the first one that I'm going to talk about, is Isaiah Thomas and Isaiah Thomas going to the Lakers. I'm sorry, Isaiah Thomas and what is his name? I should know it. Channing Frye. Isaiah Thomas and Channing Frye were traded to the Lakers for Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance Jr. Now, I'm gonna chew into this a little bit because it's strange, but it's not strange, and I'll explain why. Isaiah Thomas had been with the team for 15. He'd been on the team for 15 games, or he had played 15 games. In that time period, there were like two other games I guess you can count, so they were like 7 and 10. I found a video, and sometimes videos don't tell stories, but videos find funny ways of telling stories. And there was a video that was, I guess, someone had edited on YouTube. I shared it with my sports group. I know I'm gonna get a lot of entertaining feedback from that, where you didn't see a lot of chemistry between Isaiah Thomas and LeBron James. Now, the toughest thing in the NBA, and this has been said or has been presented numerous times, LeBron James is not one of the easiest players to play with. Whether that's valid or invalid is up for discussion, but on the same token, he's one of the best players in the NBA, if not the best. A lot of people don't like to do that discussion because there's so many superstars who have superstar-based moments, such as James Harden, Kevin Durant, obviously Steph Curry. Russell Westbrook. The list goes on and on. Obviously, with you thinking of many of the players who are starting or participating in the All-Star event, that alone kind of gives you a measurement of the talent in the NBA. Do I think Isaiah Thomas in the long haul would have worked with Cleveland? No. Here's what people don't look at and what is not really portrayed in limelight. If you know the NBA, many times there are a lot of players who have played in the NBA for X number of years that become coaches. In this example, I'm going to use the Clippers. The Clippers coach currently is Doc Rivers. For the 6 or 7 years that they were making runs and strides to get to the NBA playoffs, there was a point guard who was there who just went to Houston named Chris Paul. The hardest thing to have occur in the NBA is when guards coach other guards. You push it from that scenario and you look at this scenario. Tyronn Lue, even though he wasn't one of the greatest NBA players, we'll just put it out there, Tyronn Lue was a guard in the NBA. Isaiah Thomas also was a guard in the NBA. Isaiah Thomas is a guard in the NBA. Isaiah Thomas was not in tune or in chemistry with Tyronn Lue or with the Celtics offense. With the Cavs offense. When he was with Boston, everything was great. There was no problem, no issues, no concerns. You turn the page, you flip it on the opposite side. You look at Kyrie. You look at Kyrie with Brad Stevens, and it's a much different style of basketball, which is ironic, but it's reality. Team building, and you also have to take this in mind. In Boston, Isaiah wasn't the man, and I think a lot of people forgot that Isaiah was a revisited version of Ben Gordon, where you got instant offense off the bench. Him going to Cleveland, and along with him being at Boston, he was looking at himself and expected to be the man. He was considered to be the go-to guy, which it was possible and it had that potential of being such, but he never. In Cleveland, it was a very one-off scenario, only because you just didn't have it was a different style of basketball. Because if you look at Cleveland, regardless of who comes in as a guard, Derrick Rose is there as a guard, which I'm going to get into that in a moment. Derrick Rose is there as a guard. LeBron still handled the ball. Kyrie Irving, even with him before he left to go to Boston, LeBron still handled the ball. All of those constants don't change, of the obvious that LeBron was going to be the ball handler, aka point forward, no matter how you look at it, if you put someone as a point guard in that position. So you get Isaiah Thomas gone, you get Channing Frye gone. Isaiah's young, that kind of hurt. Channing Frye was a veteran, got his contract off your books. You got young talent coming in. Larry Nance is going to fit in as far as for rotational purposes, and to give kind of sparks of energy off the bench. Jordan Clarkson needed the green light because Jordan Clarkson was struggling behind Lonzo Ball. No one's going to say it. No one wants to acknowledge it. LA wants to make Lonzo the man. Don't know how it's going to work, but they want to make him the man. Now, that being said, now you look at the opposite side and put Isaiah in LA. I don't see Isaiah fitting. Isaiah will fit well in LA, but having him as a two guard is going to be interesting, let alone it's been addressed and no one likes to go into this. He's a defensive liability for a lot of teams. And that plays into how the game kind of turns in the long haul. So you have that trade happening. Then the Cavaliers then turn around and get George Hill and Rodney Hood, thanks to a trade involving the Kings and the Jazz. Derrick Rose goes to Utah. Utah lets him go. Right now he's on waivers. No one's really, and I put this in my show notes because it's valid to who and what how you look at it with him. No team is jumping into that pit of fire and getting Derrick Rose. I'm going to talk about a story with him later on with Ass of the Week, but currently we're going to go into this piece. Derrick Rose is not this isn't Derrick Rose you're getting from MVP Derrick Rose. This isn't Derrick Rose that you're getting in that resurging with the Knicks. You're getting a Derrick Rose that you don't know how long he's going to play, whether it's for the seasons or whether it's even for his career. Part of the trade, too, was Joe Johnson was traded. And then Joe Johnson was released based on waivers. And Houston eventually picked him up. And they just made an announcement today that Houston released Troy Williams to make space to get Joe Johnson on their roster. The Rockets picked up 2 players off waivers. They picked him up, and they picked up Brandon Wright off of waivers. 3 big names that everyone talked about during this time period were DeAndre Jordan, Marcus Smart, Tyreke Evans. None of them moved. DeAndre, I see in the next year I can see him going somewhere. But the only tough part about it is the Clippers have to get something back for him, so that's why there wasn't much movement for him. Marcus Smart, it's kind of like a gift and a curse because now he's starting to get a personality and a game in the NBA, but and this is something I always talk about a lot of times with basketball. Some players pan out well in the NBA and some don't. And it's that, the one and done battle, but they still end up having a career playing in the NBA. They don't, like a lot of times, for instance, James Young, who came from Kentucky, he's under a 2-way contract. So I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast. I'll go into it again. 2-way contract basically is your contract states that you are indeed an NBA player, but you have the option and the ability to go back to the D League. You can jump back and forth between the D League and the NBA. And it's not like, okay, you went to the G League. You went in the G League, you played, a scout saw you, they picked you up and gave you a 10-day contract. He's not in that case. He's in the scenario of whoever Boston's affiliated team is, he can go down to the G League. Well, I think he's with the Sixers now, but he can go to the G League and play, but he can also come back to the 76ers and play as well. Just giving that example. Tyreke Evans, free agency will probably be his calling of being picked up. The Hawks came to an agreement with Bellinelli as far as buying him out. He did go to the Sixers. He's going to bring veteran leadership and good another shooter to that team, especially with Ben Simmons being unable to shoot. Obviously, Joel Embiid will take threes, but he's not a shooter. And Markelle Fultz just is not going to be playing. I am certain to believe if we don't see him at all in March, they're just going to go ahead and shelf him for the rest of the year because there's no point in him playing this year. Trust the process. You can use whatever terms and BS it in whatever way it looks good for you. It's not going to change anything. It is time to just make changes. So there's that trade. There are those players who will kind of see what their destinies are for the future. A weird, but it was weird, but it was expected. Elfrid Payton left. He was picked up by the Phoenix Suns. Orlando got the second pick from Phoenix. I'm sorry, a second round pick from Phoenix for that trade. Payton had a pretty good year. Was having a good year this year. He's averaging 13 a game and shooting 52%. Looking at him in rotation with Phoenix helps out. You have Tyler Ulis is their second-year guard. You still have John Gray and Isaiah Cannon had a tough injury, and they actually let him go as well. So this also then puts the position of now Devin Booker is no longer put in a position where he has to be the point guard. He can actually be a shooting guard again. So it'll get his points, his production of points back up, because it's all triggers back to that to the Eric Bledsoe trade that we didn't expect. And now you look at how it all panned out. Bledsoe's playing okay. We don't hear much about Bledsoe. Greg Monroe was with Phoenix for a while, sent him off. Now he's with Boston, where he has a chance to make the playoffs. He's just more of a role player and kind of coming off the bench to get a couple minutes. Big push that happened. So another couple other swaps. Sheldon Mack was picked up by the Hawks from the Wizards for cash considerations, and they gave away a protected 2019 second round pick. Then you have Rashad Vaughn, who kind of was put in the position of, it was kind of like the Rasheed Wallace trade 2.0, where Rasheed Wallace went to Atlanta for like one game, and then he went to Detroit, but obviously they won a championship. I don't know if that's going to be the case with this team, but Rashad Vaughn's time with the Brooklyn Nets was short-lived, it seems. Vaughn was traded to the Nets in a February 5th trade with the Milwaukee Bucks, played one game for Brooklyn. Now he's being dealt to the New Orleans Pelicans for Dante Cunningham. That's just, it's a trade that happened. Emmanuel Mudiay, forgot to mention this, I don't have this in the show notes, but Emmanuel Mudiay was indeed traded to the Knicks. That was coming, whether people realize it or not, with Jamal Murray coming in. Gary Harris is starting to pick up now with Denver. Denver's kind of going young. And I mean, Mudiay is young, but Mudiay just never developed. I don't know how to describe it. So the Nuggets is sending Mudiay to the Knicks. It's part of a three-way trade. The trade includes the Mavericks, who get Doug McDermott from New York, and the Nuggets will get Devin Harris. If any of you remember, Devin Harris from Wisconsin could play his butt off. NBA, it translated to the NBA, and it has for the most part. He's just kind of now become that trade piece for a lot of teams in most cases. So I mean, that no harm there. The Knicks will also send the Nuggets a 2018 second round pick, while the Nuggets send a 2018 second round pick that came from Portland to Dallas. Another big move, and like I said, I've given the Cavs a lot of attention, but I do want to mention that Wade returned home. He is playing for Miami again. I am gonna say this because others have probably already projected this. He's going home to he's gonna play. Is one of two things gonna happen? Either he retires this season and retires as a Heat, or he plays next season out, get like veterans minimum. They work out a deal, to kind of let him have like that. I don't want to say going away. Well, yeah, we'll call it. We don't want to compare it to the Kobe Bryant stint, but it'll be like a farewell tour where he plays against different teams and things of that nature. That is going to be one to look forward to as well. It gives them a surge. Whether it gives the Heat any hope of being playoff bound, we don't know yet, because the Eastern Conference is still wide open. Jameer Nelson went to the Pistons. That gives them, more backcourt production, and with Reggie Jackson being out right now, that's beneficial as well. And then my last point that I have, of course, since I've talked about, there are other trades that were mentioned. All of those trades I do have listed on in the show notes. But this all then triggers to the obvious and the main point. The new look Cavs. So they played against Boston. I know Boston went flat. What happened? LeBron and Kyrie had a couple matches against each other, one-on-one. But it was more so you could tell that the guys who came in were coming in to do their role. Rodney Hood has always had a good mid-range, but he opens up the floor. George Hill opens up the floor as well, because George Hill isn't the best shooter, but George Hill is a good distributor. Gonna come back to that point again because we talked about it earlier. How will this implement based on the LeBron James handling the ball, George Hill being a point guard scenario? We don't know. They could be doing this trade just to get space, cap space. We don't know. Might be some trades involved to try and move up to get a number one pick. Again, we don't know. But these are things that I'm projecting and I'm thinking or saying out loud could play or be looked at down the road with this trade happening, or with these trades of the new team. They actually just got a notification, which I'm personally going to be looking forward to. With the new Cavs lineup, how will this look and how will things go? They have a new match. Well, they got a test with Boston, but they'll get an even more unique test or eye test with the Thunder. I believe they've already played the Warriors twice, if I'm not mistaken. If they haven't, if they play the Warriors again, that should be a good run to keep an eye on as well. So that's kind of like a clear cut generic, well, not generic, but a clear cut overall synopsis of the trades and transactions that have gone down involving the NBA. So that was kind of like a whisk of who got traded, who's still home, and what we look for, what we should be seeing for the next couple of weeks going into the playoffs. And one other note, because I did want to mention this, life after Blake is bleak. And I say it that way because Blake is looking pretty good with Detroit, and the Clippers are looking like the Clippers of old, where winning is kind of coming and going. Lou Williams, I have a feeling, maybe starting more based on the lineup they have. If they keep him on the bench, that's fine. There was uncertainty whether Lou would get traded. Luckily, Lou got a contract extension on the day of the trade deadline to make it clear we're making you our guy. So that's a good sign for them. Now, this will be what I define personally as the 2% of the sports world for me. I usually am not huge on watching the Olympics very often, but I still watch. And I watch, the Summer Olympics. Summer Olympics isn't until 2020, but it's every 2 years. So this year, of course, is the Winter Olympics. Forgot all about it. Didn't really think much of it till it was brought to my attention of the opening ceremony. Ceremony, I think, was at like 6 in the morning. They re-aired it later on that night at 8, which I believe that was last Thursday or Friday, if I'm recalling correctly. I want to say it was Friday, but they, had that on TV. I didn't get to see it. But, there were a lot of events, or there are a lot of events. And I'm going to point out a few that have caught my attention, and a couple of topics that have kind of hit for me. So first and foremost, this comes up every year. There are two sports that I find to be odd but realistic. One is called speed walking. If you watch the Olympics in 2020, just prepare for me to talk about speed walking when it comes, so I can tell you who won. But there's also in the Winter Olympics an event called curling. It's basically a younger, heavier version of shuffleboard. There are these huge pucks that I call it like a humongous, like, rock puck, whatever, that you're trying to slide down ice, and you have the person. And it was weird when I watched it because it's to the point where a person may slide the puck, and they're following the puck to get in front of it at a certain pace to get it to slow down, to be able to, knock stuff down or whatever, or knock the other points off. Now, let me go ahead and say this now. I've turned into an addict of watching curling, first and foremost. Didn't realize how much I watched it or how much I was into it until I really would catch myself. Like, it was a couple of days ago, I think it was Sunday. Between Saturday and Sunday, I felt like I watched it 12 times. Not exaggerating, being honest. Like, it was a point where I woke up, curling was on TV. I was hanging out at a bar, waiting to meet someone. It was on TV. I went to an event I went to, like, I was, after the event ended, went to another bar. They were re-airing matches that I had already seen. Curling takes over my brain. Have become an anonymous Norwegian fan. It is what it is. But I watch it and I enjoy it. So that's my little 2% of that sport. The big story, I think I got at least 3,000. I'm exaggerating. I got at least 4 or 5 notifications about Chloe Kim. She had won the women's snowboard halfpipe. She's from the U.S. She's 17 years old. She defeated her nearest rival in the women's snowboard halfpipe by almost 10 points to add another gold medal to her tally. So she did pretty. I mean, she knocked it out this. So she's knocking it out so far this winter. So props to her for that. Another event that I'm going to talk about. So first and foremost, I'm not going to sit here and tell you about all the events. There's so many. If I do that, then I won't get the podcast done. Let's just be honest. But couple more events that caught my attention, and then we'll switch over to stuff. I saw an event, had no idea what it was, went on the website, learned what it is. So I'm gonna put you in the mind of what this event does, and then it'll kind of tie into what the show notes explains. You're skiing, just naturally skiing, just going through the slopes, all that sound effects. I got to make it random and petty. You're skiing, and in the midst of you skiing, you have to do the skiing part of the event that tests one part of your endurance. Then you turn around and you have to get down like you're trying to shoot at a target, and you have to hit 5 targets. And that's not get away with missing a couple of targets. You have to hit 5 targets to avoid penalties. This, my friends, is called the biathlon. If you may or may not have known that. We know about triathlons as far as running, bicycling, and swimming. But the biathlon for the Winter Olympics consists of you skiing and rifle shooting. And I watched it, and I was confused, but I was amazed at the same time. So I watched that, and that was a fun sport to get into, keeping an eye on as well. One other sport that I saw, and every time I look at it, I feel like it is what would happen to me, and that is the skeleton. I feel like my skeleton would be left on that field. On that track. So the skeleton basically works of you having these little shoes on, and I always emphasize the shoe part of it because when they finish the race, there's really nothing that can stop them except for them turning their sled a perfect way to get it so that it, like, I guess, goes against the side but not mess up the side. I don't know, the siding of the location. But that being said, the event is basically you laying back and you're wearing a helmet, and that's it. And you just are riding down a slide, and the slide has different turns and twists, and you have to tilt your head perfect enough to basically to maintain speed, but also not lose control of the sled. Which, by the way, is just under you, and that's it. There's no, you don't have, anywhere that you can reach out and say, hey, wait, hold on, I don't want to go yet. That's it. There's really not much else to it. I did watch ski jump as well. I don't have that listed, but ski jump I was into as well. As far as it's like the long, I call it the long ski jump, but it's ski jump. And you would never think of it from watching it, but it's factored in with observing it, how much the weather can play a role into an event such as a ski jump. Because if it's too windy, they won't race, or they'll postpone it for a while until the speeds have lowered, and it can benefit the skier as they take their plunge into no man's land. No, I'm saying that very undetailed, but I'm being very Brian-esque. Quit saying that. So those are my sports topics, and I wanted to share. Like I said, the Olympic one I really was stuck on because I was like, wait, they're doing what? So I wanted to definitely give those their proper attention. So now we go into the stuff. The stuff is a little. The stuff has been kind of me coming out of my shell a little bit, and I'll explain why with each portion as we get into them. The first piece of the first story we'll get into is related to an update that was released by a well-known company called Snapchat. People basically do not like the new version of Snapchat. The new version of Snapchat is attracting fierce criticism from users who are pleading with the company to reverse the changes, which they won't. The app has been completely redesigned, and fans say they're struggling to find and use their favorite features like stories. These have been moved to the new Friends page where they sit alongside regular snaps and messages. There's also a breakdown of all the changes and how to use the new version of Snapchat. If you click on the link, it will go over that for you and you'll be fine. Feedback from Snapchat users on Twitter has been overwhelmingly negative. Can we please have? I'm going to read the tweets that some people have written. Can we please have the old version back? This new update is confusing and complicated. Social media is supposed to be easy and fun. My friends and I would really appreciate it. Thanks, at Snapchat. The new Snapchat update is more complicated than trying to turn on your friend's shower. Not true if you know how to use a shower. Hi, Snapchat. Your new layout UI update is absolutely terrible. Won't be using the app due to this. What were you guys thinking? Thinking emoji. I bet the same evil person behind changing Instagram chronological order is behind a new Snapchat update. We must stop them before they come for Twitter next. Don't give them ideas. The Snapchat support Twitter account has been busy replying to complaints from users, some of whom are threatening to delete the app unless they can get the old version of Snapchat back. Not going to read all of these. I'm going to read one that's funny to me that I was surprised by. At Snapchat support, how do I delete my account? I'd like to completely remove myself from your services. Their response, and they don't. I wish I saw the time, but I guess from what I'm looking at, it looks like they responded to them in batches. Head over to, and they have the link. Note: the account is permanently deleted. After the account is permanently deleted, the username will no longer be available, which is basically their way of saying, if you are wanting to delete any account, we're not going to stop you from deleting the account. It's not going to change the interface. Just putting it out there. Snapchat, meanwhile, is aware of the complaints with a company spokesperson this week saying, updates as big as this one can take a little getting used to, but we hope the community will enjoy it once they settle in. The alterations have been designed to help Snapchat make money, and the company this week revealed strong fourth quarter financial results. The new version of Snapchat started reaching users around the turn of the year, but the company is now stepping up the rollout. And at first, a lot of people did get the updates. I know for me, I didn't see it. I was like, oh, I still have the old Snapchat. I'm good. Saw the new update, and I'm like, okay, I get it. I get why everybody's frustrated. A couple of things that I, picked up on. First and foremost, obviously, people don't like to change. Before I do that, let me just finish out the article, and then I'll give my thoughts on a couple of things. It announced the redesign last November after reporting revenue and user growth well below Wall Street expectations. It also said some users found the app difficult to understand and use. We'll just take a moment of silence. I'm sorry. The app was initially looked at as difficult to understand and use. So instead of you making it easier to use, you made it more difficult to understand and use. There's a strong likelihood that the redesign of our application will be disruptive to our business in the short term, and we don't yet know how the behavior of our community will change when they begin to use our updated application, Snapchat CEO Evan Spiegel said at the time. We're willing to take that risk for what we believe are substantial long-term benefits to our business. So, gonna go into some things, and I don't have a lot of these written in the show notes, but I'm gonna just kind of vent a little bit to give my listeners a better understanding. Instagram got changed a year ago. Instagram removed the algorithm of chronological order, and they implemented an algorithm that has nothing to do with chronological order. People fussed about it, complained about it, but I haven't heard as many people remove Instagram. Facebook Live still works the same. You get the interface changed to the point where with updates, they've even given you the option to go back and look at like Insta stories. You get two chances. Like you'll look at it at the top, and as you're scrolling through Instagram, oh, I didn't get to see the stories. Let me go and look at them now. So they confirm like, do you want to watch these stories or no? And like anything, you can choose to watch them or not watch them. Then there's Snapchat, where Snapchat has had its adjustments to its features. What they did, and this is going to kind of explain it as best as Snapchat wanted to explain it, but didn't explain it. They put everything in one place. They wanted it to be quote unquote uniform. Because now what that means is on your right side, you get like if you swipe left, you're getting all of the promotions, the sports, the news, the tech. That's what they want people to see predominantly. As far as looking at the Snap stories themselves, you don't have to look at those. But if you do, you have ways of being able to go through, like when you watch them, you pretty much watch them from start to finish. And then the biggest part that a lot of people weren't too big on is, okay, I watched everyone's stories. I want to go back and look at my stories, but I can't see it. How they changed that was they made the homepage pretty much streamlined as far as if you click on your picture, which I don't want to say they make you use Bitmoji, but using Bitmoji with Snapchat kind of is like one hand feeding the other. Because then what happens is you click on Bitmoji, or you click on your little person, you see your stats, you see your snaps that you've posted. Some people have like 5 Snapchat stories going. Why? I think a lot of it's preference, because trust and believe, I get it. If you're in a location and you want this to be shown or that to be shown, then you want it to be like, okay, I'm at work, so here's what's going on at work. All right, I'm at home, here's what's going on at home. What's ironic for me is I have Snapchat, and literally it's supposed to be for this podcast. Haven't used it for the podcast yet. But then I'm one of those people who I don't have to do a whole bunch of social media to know what's going on or be exposed to my routine or whatever. I guess I don't know. It's more of a preferential thing, blah blah yada yada whatever. But it's all in what works for you. If you are not, and it's just like anything else, if you do or don't like it, it's not going to change the fact that the business is still going to make money. And also, I'm going to say this, and then I'll go into the next subject. Snapchat was going to go through changes. Does anyone want to think of why they've gone through changes? I'll let you think about it for a second, and then I'm going to say something that might surprise you. Remember a couple of months back when they got their IPO and they were part of stock? That means change would come. Now, whether people like the change or are going to be open to what change you're going to receive due to that transition, Snapchat's not going to be hurt one way or the other, because it's for the consumer, but it's more so for the business. And you have to remember that. Rewind back a couple of years ago, Facebook. If anyone remembers, Facebook was the sponsor extraordinaire. Like, they would flood you with sponsorship. Sponsorship flooding is the same now, but it's not as... It's a better control to it, if that's a good way to put it. And it's just something you have to look at and understand with a business such as Snapchat. So if you use it or if you don't use it, they're gonna still do what they're doing. That's just how you gotta look at it. So now we're gonna go into, because I've neglected it, but it wasn't on purpose, and it's just how things have gone. We're at the stage of, and I believe the new stages, stage 2 of these matches are going to be kicking off soon. So stage one of Overwatch League has come and gone, and I feel bad because I wanted to kind of find ways to implement weekly stories about Overwatch, but it's easy, but it's tough only because Overwatch has so many so there are 12 teams in this league, and a lot of teams just, I mean, I hate to say it, a lot of them suck. San Francisco Shock, Dallas Fuel, Florida Mayhem, and the Shanghai Dragons all are pure trash. They play like legit hot garbage, atrociously bad for the league. I'm gonna, like I said, the records are there, the teams are there. If you're into Overwatch and you want to get like a good fix of league, check out this link. I'm detailing it and explaining it really won't do the same justice compared to watching it. If you play Overwatch, you'll understand it A to Z. I'm still learning Overwatch, so I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot for me. But the game as a whole has high replay value from what I've gathered. There's a possibility with my whole console transition, I will probably be getting this game. Just waiting for a deal of like $40, even $30, I would buy it. Not even gonna lie. So the top seed from the division gets a bye. So the two divisions are Atlantic and Pacific. So as far as the divisions, and then they say the top seed from each division will receive a first round bye. The next 4 teams, regardless of division, will also get a bye. So in this case, New York and Los Angeles gets a bye, and the next 4 teams advance. So the next 4 teams then would be Houston Outlaws, London Spitfire, Soul Destiny, and Boston Uprising, if I'm looking at this correctly. But regardless, I have this listed and I want to explain it because I was looking at it, I was like, where did they get this from? So the map, the differential, like as far as how everything's broken down, each team plays 10 games. Your wins, losses are broken down, and then on each map that you play, so matches played is 10. You won whatever amount of games and you lost whatever amount of games. The maps within that stint should come to about 42 if I'm looking at most of these scores. Some of them, it's like anywhere from like 30, 39 to 42, give or take. It's based on how many wins and losses you're getting on that particular map. Whatever your wins and losses are, that factors into what your differential is. So in this case, for instance, New York, Excelsior is plus 21 because they've won 31 games but lost 10. So 31 minus 10 would be 21. And you can break it down with the rest of the team. So that's why Shanghai was trying to get, like, even with Shanghai losing games, their map differential could have helped in some sense, but it really, they just played crap. Like, I'm just sorry. I don't know how else to put it, but it is what it is. So that's kind of my overview or my discussion or addressing of Overwatch. Overwatch matches also, I don't want to forget, stage 2 for Overwatch actually starts tomorrow or Wednesday, depending on when you listen to the podcast. So on Wednesday the 14th, matches will be picking up for that. Swinging over to the League of Legends world, which I didn't realize how much I would get into watching League until I played League personally, and now understanding a lot of what's done on League, I can have a better understanding towards it, which is a huge plus. If you go to the website that I provided, kind of gives you a schedule for the teams who are playing. They will be playing matches for the North America League Championship on Saturday and Sunday, and for the Europe teams, it's going to be on Friday and Saturday. The teams who are involved, I want to make sure I don't leave any of that information out, because I did, like I said, I send you to the site, but I don't really give you much information. Gonna wait for that to load up. As of right now, the matchups involved, and I don't know why they gave me this part. I don't want this. I want the standings. All right. So the standings as of right now, I don't know why I had that accent. Don't take it personal. Standings as of right now, Echo Fox is number one. That's my favorite, who I'm going for. Not just because of their record. I just like Echo Fox as a whole with other sporting or gaming events. Cloud9 second. They're both tied 7-1. Team Liquid's third, 5-3. TSM top solo mid, 4-4. Clutch Gaming is 4-4. 100 Thieves, still my favorite because of the emoji reference, 4-4. Counter Logic or CLG is 3-5. FlyQuest is 3-5. Optic is 2-6. This isn't Call of Duty, so it is what it is. And the Golden Guardians are 1-7. So before I continue, because I want to make sure I bring this up, because a lot of people may or may not know this, and I'm all about educating and helping those who watch or keep up with something. The NBA has actually become involved with League of Legends. For instance, the team that was in last place, the Golden State team, they actually are sponsored with Golden State. If you look at the team name and look at the logo, it's pretty much obvious. Clutch Gaming, of course, same way. Clutch Gaming was affiliated with the Houston Rockets. They're just the best way I can describe it is the NBA is getting more involved with what they see and what's going on. So I give a lot of credit to that. But yeah, these teams, I mean, it's kind of up for grabs. The teams that you're going to kind of know as being the biggest factors are TSM, Team Liquid, Cloud9, and Echo Fox. Now, I used to watch CSGO. Haven't watched much CSGO in a while because CSGO hasn't really... It's gotten the attention in the waves, but it's not as big of a wave as League, in my opinion. They're both like I'm not gonna say retro, but classic based games, and we see that in how they're still being played years later. Jumping in with our, because we're doing kind of good at a good pace today. We have our artist spotlight this week. Many people don't give them enough credit as being in the hip hop culture, but to me, they're a group that you can't speak or talk hip hop, and it's kind of like neo hip hop, but it's not neo hip hop, if that's a good way to say it. But artist spotlight this week is none other than The Roots. Article should not bore y'all too bad, so I'm gonna whisk through it, but still give some information and kind of point out my personal bullet points with them. One of the most prolific rap groups, The Roots, were also among the most progressive acts in contemporary music, from their 93 debut to their conceptual 2010s releases. Despite seemingly archaic practice of functioning as a rap band with several instruments from 2007 onward, the lineup even featured a sousaphonist. They were ceaselessly creative, whether with their own material or through their varied assortment of collaborations. They went platinum and gold with successive studio releases and won a handful of Grammy Awards. After they gained a nightly nationwide audience through a close partnership with television host Jimmy Fallon, they continued to challenge listeners with works free of genre restrictions. The Roots' focus on live music began back in 1987 when rapper Black Thought and drummer Questlove became friends at Philadelphia High School for Creative Performing Arts. Playing around school on the sidewalk and later at talent shows, the pair began to earn money and hooked up with bassist Hub and rapper Malik B. Moving from the street to local clubs, the Roots became a nightly tipped underground act around Philadelphia and New York. When they were invited to represent stateside hip hop at a concert in Germany, the Roots recorded an album to sell at shows. The result, Organics, was released in May of '93 on Remedy Records. With a music industry buzz surrounding their activities, the Roots entertained offers from several labels before signing with DGC that same year. The Roots' first major album, Do You Want More, was released in January '95, Forsaking usual hip hop protocol, the album was produced without any samples of previously recorded material. It peaked just outside the top 100 of the Billboard 200 and made more tracks in alternative circles, partly due to the Roots playing the second stage at Lollapalooza that summer. The band also journeyed to the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland. Two of the guests on the album who had toured around the band, human beatbox Rozelle, the Godfather of Noise, previously a performer with Grandmaster Flash, and LL Cool J, and Scott Storch became permanent members of the group. Early in '96, the Roots released Clones, the trailer single for their second album. It hit the rap top 5 and created a good buzz. That September, Philadelphia Life appeared and made number 21 on Billboard 200. Much like its predecessor, though, the Roots' second LP was a difficult listen. It made several very small concessions to mainstream rap. The band members sampled material that they had recorded earlier at jam sessions, but failed to make a hit of their unique sound. Their third album, February 1999's Things Fall Apart, was easily their biggest critical and commercial success. Released on MCA, it went platinum, and You Got Me, a collaboration with Erykah Badu, peaked within the top 40 and subsequently won a Grammy in the category of Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group. The long-awaited Phrenology was released in November of '02 amid rumors of the Roots losing interest in their label arrangements with MCA. In '04, the band remedied the situation by creating the Okaplayer Company. Named after their website, Okaplayer included a record label and a production promotion company. The same year, the band held a series of jam sessions to give their next album a looser feel. The results were edited down to 10 tracks and released as The Tipping Point, supported by Geffen in July of '04. An '04 concert from Manhattan's Webster Hall with special guests like Mobb Deep, Young Guns, and Jean Grae was released. In February '05, as the Roots present in both CD and DVD formats. 2 volumes of the Rarities collecting Homegrown, The Beginner's Guide to Understanding the Roots appeared at the end of the year. A subsequent deal with Def Jam fostered a series of riveting, often grim sets, beginning with Game Theory and Rising Down, August of '06 and April of '08. In '09, the group expanded its reach as the exceptionally versatile house band on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. The new gig didn't slow their recording schedule. In 2010 alone, they released the sharp How I Got Over in June, as well as Wake Up in September. And they backed John Legend on covers of socially relevant soul classics like Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes' Wake Up Everybody, and Donny Hathaway's Little Ghetto Boy. It earned Grammy Awards for Best R&B Album and Best Traditional R&B Vocal Performance. As they remained with Fallon, the Roots worked with Miami soul legend Betty Wright on November 2011's Betty Wright the Movie, and followed it the next month with their 13th studio album, Undone, an ambitious concept album whose main character dies in the first track and then follows his life backward. Work on the group's next studio album was postponed as an unexpected duet album with Elvis Costello took priority over the group in 2013. Originally planned as an reinterpretation of Costello's songbook, the album Wise Up Ghost turned into a full-fledged collaboration and was greeted by positive reviews upon its September 2013 release on Blue Note. Within 6 months, the band joined Jimmy Fallon in his late night slot, the high-profile Tonight Show program. Another concept album, The Brief But Deep, ... and Then You Shoot Your Cousin, was released in May of 2014. All right, so usually I say these and then I don't give too much information about a group, but I normally will say that, but then I turn around and give like random minutia that a lot of you may or may not know. So I'm doing this as a dual reference, and it's kind of an ironic situation because I think I talked about this last week, so I'll share it again this week. Last week, as many of you remember, talked about the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, and we did Stephanie Mills, who was a Philadelphia-based artist. The Roots, obviously Philadelphia-based artist, but also I chose the Roots this week because anytime you talk to me about the Roots, everyone had albums, everyone had their link and their love for the Roots, personally, mentally, whatever. Mine to this day was Things Fall Apart. Have not listened to that album in a couple of months, but that's an album that I can go back and listen to and just love. Don't get me wrong, You Got Me was a great, commercials single. With music, a lot of times, and I'm guilty of always addressing this, but I feel like it's relevant for this cause and with any cause of an artist. The commercial songs are the songs that we hear on the radio. They're great. They do their job. They play. They circulate. They get their attention. No problem. I'm good. I can roll with that. But it's those tracks that you don't hear on the radio that make you really want to go back and listen to and enjoy an album for what it's worth. It's one song that they did called You Won't See Us, But We'll See You. You stuck on sneaking on your P's and Q's, but you will get cut with no discrep. That song, I'm sorry, I know y'all, I know a lot of people probably have not, would be surprised of how much I listen to music. That's one of those discomfort songs for me because I really can sit, one of my friends, diehard Roots fan, and I'm not at his level, but when it comes to me with certain songs, that one, I was playing in the ground. Like, I would literally, to put it in perspective, anytime you have an album or a record, if you had a CD player, I'm taking it back, because I don't even, I'm surprised stores are still selling CDs, and I think, I need to find that article, I may bring that up, because a lot of stores are slowly but surely going to get rid of CDs since we're streaming everything. But CDs, anytime you had a CD, and a physical CD, and then you had a CD player that played, to play your CDs or whatever, all you thinking is, okay, the laser just gonna ride through it and it's good to go. You would look at the bottom of the CD and it would be like, I didn't scratch it or anything. I've been putting it in the case, taking it out, but it was just how much it got played. And that Roots album, that Roots CD was one of them for me. Not gonna lie, to this day. I played and I listened to a lot of other music, listened to a lot of other artists. The Roots for me was it. I mean, Stevie I talked about before is one of my top artists, but Roots would probably be in my top 5 as far as music that I would, if it an album would come out, I'm like, oh, let me go check, just give it here and don't say nothing, just give it here and don't, those were songs that just you can always think of, between, and that was, that was Roots, but that was more Mos Def and all that phase, but still, it was music that you valued. Like I said, that's why I call it that neo hip hop. And then it was, of course, by it being Philly based, it was already on its own wavelength anyhow. As we go into wavelengths, I am pleased to announce that normally I usually, and I've noticed this too now, typically it's usually okay, I got one ass of the week, but lately it's been just dumb stuff happening, and then I'm like, okay, we can't leave this story out because it's relevant to the community, but it's also something that you may or may not have known has going on or is going on. So the first story that I have actually was shared, I recorded that Tuesday of last, I'm like, when did I record? I recorded Tuesday of last week. Went to listen, and as I was listening, the story hit my phone, and I'm like, no. This needs to go in the podcast right now. I don't care. I'm going to put it in. But contracts that are signed for athletes have very unique clauses and stipulations, and I'm going to explain what I mean in saying that. So the title of this article, Derrick Rose's brother and friends' salaries revealed in leaked Adidas contract. Quote unquote leaked. Start there. Derrick Rose hasn't resembled the explosive playmaker who won the 2011 NBA MVP award as a member of the Chicago Bulls for some time, thanks largely to injuries. But Adidas is reportedly still paying him and those around him head-turning amounts of money. On Tuesday, John Worthing of Sports Illustrated reported the publication obtained Rose's 40-page contract with Adidas that showed the point guard making an annual retainer of $12 million per season from 2012 to 2013 through 2016 to 2017 and $11 million this season. I'm not going to really break down numbers on this show, but I'm just going to let you listen to what you're hearing numbers-wise, and then we're going to chew this apart because this is very interesting. It also included royalties of up to $6.25 million per year, as much as $4.8 million in annual appearance fees, and use of a private plane, Wortham wrote. In addition to Rose, his older brother Reggie makes between $250,000 and $300,000 a year from the deal as a consultant, and his best friend Randall Hampton takes in between $50,000 and $75,000 a year for quote-unquote consulting. While the payments for Rose, given his current status in the NBA seem borderline absurd, Wortham pointed out there was a timing element involved in all this. Rose re-signed with Adidas in February 2012, soon after he won the MVP at 22 years old for his hometown team, and right when Kobe was entering the twilight of his career and LeBron James was dealing with the fallout from his decision to go from his hometown team in the Cleveland Cavaliers to the Miami Heat. Rose, who was an explosive playmaker in the open floor and routinely thrilled his fans with his dizzying speed and rim-rattling dunks, seemed like a sure thing marketability-wise, and Adidas responded in kind to keep him aboard. However, perhaps the most surprising thing is Wortham's note that Rose's contract hasn't been at least deducted, even though there are clauses to do so if he doesn't make an All-Star team, he hasn't made one since 2012, or misses more than 41 regular season games, which he did in 2012 through 2013 and 2013 to 2014. But unlike most contracts, Rose's has clauses nullifying said deductions if he makes various promotional appearances, according to Worthing. Rose was also accused of rape in 2015, and Worthing noted though Rose was cleared by a jury in a civil suit, Adidas conceivably would have invoked the morals cause and asserted that the allegations had, as his contract states, a material adverse effect against the reputation of Adidas, but it didn't. I've never seen anything like this, a sports agent said when discussing Rose's contract per Wortham. The shoe companies are rigorous enforcers of contracts. They're saying there's always another player and never enough money. Rose has played just 14 games for the Cleveland Cavaliers this season, and is averaging 11 points and 1.5% assists per game as a role player on James' squad. He is far from superstardom at this point in his career, but it hasn't stopped Adidas from paying him like he's still in his prime. So, I want to be a consultant, and this is why the consultant part of this is why this is Ass of the Week, because their consulting makes them nearly $300,000. They're making six figures a year. They're making six figures a year. Like, one is making six figures and the other one is making 75, close to six figures a year for their quote unquote consulting. And this is a friend and his brother who are involved in this. 22 years old in 2012, he was the man. Keep in mind that would put him at 28 which is still considered to be the prime of your career if he was healthy. But because of the contract that he has, it's not affecting him one way or the other. What makes it more interesting is a lot of it's equaled out and levied thanks to him making appearances. So in other words, if he goes to China, promotes Adidas, he's good. Doesn't matter if he plays games or not. That then ties into why it makes a lot more sense back in, I want to say it was December. It was either December, may have been early January, when he was kind of on the fence of whether he was going to stay in the NBA, whether he wanted to leave. He was ready to drop everything. He was over it. I'm done. I'm through. And he decided, no, I'm going to stay. I'm going to play. He didn't want to lose money. And it's not just him losing the money or, folks around him losing money. It's I always come back to this, and people around me are probably tired of hearing it. And I think this is part of why my podcast has become my home. Your brand is who you are. You represent your brand whether you know it or not. And that comes down to your personal brand or your business brand. Derrick Rose has a personal brand that has nothing to do with Adidas. But Adidas is part of his brand now. So he has to maintain that Adidas brand as well as still maintain a brand as a person. So there's expectations of you going to events, whether your heart or your mind ain't in the right place and you don't feel like being bothered or whatever the case may be, you still have a job or a role to do as an athlete. And he's made sure to fulfill that role, which is the most important factor. So it's an ass of the week strictly because of them getting paid. But I give kudos because whoever did this contract knew what they was doing. Because keep in mind, the brothers didn't do the contract. They just were consultants. They're more so involved in the backstory. Because I think his brother, if I'm remembering correctly, I think his brother was the one who kind of made the announcement that he was looking to possibly, he's stepping away from the game. But there was never any talk of the exact words retirement, because you have to be sure. I'm gonna be brutally honest. If he was to retire right now, let's see, 2017, you look at 2018, you look at 2023. At the latest, I could see him making the Hall by 2030, if then. And that's a stretch. So that's what I want to say. So 2018, 5 years, 2023. By 2030, if not longer, that would probably be when I would see him making the Hall of Fame, if that was even in the thought. Our other, and this is a legitimate ass of the week because they're just stupid. 2 men possibly have the chance to be facing up to 30 years in prison. They were charged with bank fraud following what's known as a jackpotting heist. And I'm going to kind of explain, I'm going to read this article and it'll kind of explain an overview of how it works. A Connecticut court has charged 2 men with bank fraud after they allegedly stole thousands of dollars through ATM jackpotting. While a relatively new scheme in the U.S., jackpotting has been a problem in Asia, Europe, and Mexico for years, and involves loading up ATMs with malware and forcing them to release their cash contents. The 2 men are said to have dressed up as ATM technicians and accessed a Citizens Bank ATM in Cromwell, Connecticut in late January. Police found them near the ATM with tools and electronic devices believed to be required for jackpotting, as well as $9,000 in $20 bills. Last month, security researcher Brian Krebs wrote about jackpotting coming to the U.S., noting in a follow-up post that a handful of individuals had been arrested in November for allegedly carrying out a string of jackpotting heists in Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah. It appears that ATMs running outdated Windows software are the main targets, along with the Cromwell jackpotting theft. law enforcement officials and ATM manufacturers have been looking into attacks in two other Connecticut cities, as well as Providence, Rhode Island. Two men, a Massachusetts resident and a Spanish national, face a maximum of 30 years in prison. So 30 years for trying to get more money out of an ATM than it's supposed to get out. All because your malware, it's like your malware overriding the system to make it think that more money is coming out than expected. And even worse, it's running Windows, older versions of Windows. So there are a lot of asses that I can put into this one. Number one, I'm gonna target the simple option here. Sorry about that. Number one, I'm gonna point to the two men who did the crime. Don't know what you were thinking. Unsure how you thought you were gonna get away with it. I digress. Can't break that part down. Because number one, to add to bullet point your number one, they have cameras at the ATM machines. Even if you're dressed up like someone, unless you just hiding your face altogether, you come on now. It's not that serious. Number two, it's 2018. I get that using more reliable, older software or versions of operating systems may work. But updating software or trying to use software that can no longer be supported, you're doing it wrong, banks. And I'm putting all banks on the line on this one. I get that it's a simple interface and it's a screen that's there and you're just, all the person is doing is touch screen. I got that. That's fine. I can live with that. What I can't live with is if it's just a simple update or newer software. Getting newer software, you can't be that cheap. Not when it comes to security breach. Potential security breaches or data. And I know I'm jumping a little bit when talking about security breach and data breach, but it's important to point out related to this, only because it's gonna be a part of what transpires with that. It's odd. I'm random ramble because y'all know I always give random stories. Normally, whenever I do my recordings, there's always like little sound effects that I'll hear through listening to the show. Now that I'm back to my older format of how I'm doing my shows, it's gone. So I guess sometimes change is good. But anywho, I'm saying all that to say this. And this probably will be like a weird way to end the show. And this is going to be for Banks. This is going to be for Mr. Rose. This is going to be for everyone. Protect your brand. And this is across the line. This is even for me. If you don't want anyone else to get a hold of what you have or what you're doing, get wraps on it early while you have the ability to do so. Because like anything in reality, once it's out of your hands, it's gone. Getting it back is kind of tough. Sometimes we don't know how much something small can impact us. But if a bank loses hundreds of thousands of dollars and you have people doing that on a consistent basis, it adds up. And it's tough because crooks and thieves and people who are doing shady things are always trying to think ahead. And even with what I'm, the type of role that I'm working with, I'm not going to say where, of course, but just for PR purposes. When you're dealing with something as small as metal card, let me retract that. When you're dealing with something as small as chip readers or card readers that try to get your information, you have to protect your brand. And I can't emphasize that enough. I made a weird yet random investment a couple of weeks ago. Gonna see how it works. And I haven't had any issues with it beforehand, but it's almost like I've heard people go through it, so I don't want it to happen to me type of thing. And I got a card reader. I got a not a card reader. I got a wallet that's not just a basic wallet. It's to help with RFID blockings and things of that sort. Because there are so many card readers people. There are people out here who spend energy trying to get people's information and hack into accounts and get more information. Half the time they don't do anything with the information, but just the fact that they have it makes them feel powerful. So just gain control or gain power over your information. Encrypt if you have to or if you have the ability to. Most importantly, and this is okay, final thought, and then I'm gonna close it out. If you make passwords, first and foremost, do not put passwords in places that anyone can get to it, like a notebook or a post-it note. Most annoying thing ever. Second of all, and most importantly, if you do make passwords, make them complex enough that others won't go know what it is, but make them simple enough so that you can still get into your information and not lock yourself out. That's what I'm going to leave y'all with today as we hit the 131 mark. As always, thanks for tuning in. If you stuck this long, you get props and kudos from me all day. Anyone that's been liking or downloading or playing any podcast on Spreaker, thank you. Like you don't understand. I value those listens big time. Next week we'll have a recap of the All-Star game. Looking to see what other Olympic sports I may find to tickle my fancy, and from there we'll just kind of let the show ride out, and hopefully we'll have a chill, week of sports. I believe I'm projecting this because I saw a couple stories. There's a possibility we may get some schedule releases, so we'll see if that's coming, and we'll go from there. But until next time, the Past signing out. Y'all have a good week. Do something worthwhile. And most importantly, if things are too comfortable, find a way to discomfort yourself. Until next time, take care.